You're tuned into the Writing Community Chat Show, the live streaming YouTube podcast that brings you the stories of authors, screenwriters, and more. Indie or established, this show's for the community, and we invite you to be a part of it. Head to the writingcommunitychatshow.com for more info. The WCCS, together as one, we get it done.
Hello and welcome to the Writing Community Chat Show. Hello everybody and welcome back to the Writing Community Chat Show. We are a second show of season 14, even though it's been a couple of weeks since it started. We had a technical issue last week. The show couldn't happen. The week before, the guest didn't get back to us, so that we missed that one as well. So it's been 2 weeks since the start of the season. So we are very happy to be back here in the seat to chat to you guys with a great guest lined up for you as well. We've been very busy and Chris is here with me. So we're going to have a little catch up, talk about what's coming up and all the good things that's happened in between. We hope you're doing very well. We hope you've had a great time over the last 2 weeks. And maybe you've got some good holidays planned or some exciting things. Hope you've been working well on your books, if you are indeed a writer. So how are you doing, Mr. Hooley? How are things?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Agate. I thought you were going to show us your white bits there with all your tan.
Yeah, I was a little sunburned. But yeah, I don't really want to do that, to be honest, Chris. It's not that kind of show.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we've got some patrons, so maybe afterwards you can show us.
Maybe. Yeah. So how have you been? Have you been writing much? I know, as we kind of briefly discussed before the show started, we're both in the teaching world, but you have a lot more to do over the holidays than I do. So how has your holiday been?
Yeah, lots of marking, which is always fun. The red pen is out, ready to roll. Yeah. It's ready to roll. I've already had to use it more than I was hoping, which is probably more of a reflection on me, to be honest. But yeah, I'm excited. Obviously, this week we started our very own writers group, which God knows why, 4 years in, we haven't done this earlier. But yeah, it's been good. It's, putting everyone's work in there this week. So if you're a patron of the show, either on YouTube or Twitter or any of those things, you can join in as well and you can share your work. The way we've done it is 200 to 500 words a week. You pop them into the chat. Everybody else reads and comments on your work. And we've called it Improve. Don't ask me why I called it that, but I thought, that's the aim ultimately of the group, for everyone to improve a little bit. And, I've been blown away by the people who've put their piece in there, and obviously you got your writing mojo back. As soon as I said, I'm blown away by the people who put the piece in there. I realised how that sounded, but
yeah, please don't put your piece in our chat group. Just your writing only.
Yeah, but the writing is of a very good standard already, and it's a very nice group of people, with constructive comments. And really positive comments as well. And that's exactly what you want from a working group. So yeah, that's been good.
Yeah, it really is. You could have called it something sinister like judgment. But yeah, I think improve is a good word, because we're all looking to improve as writers, and having that support network, everyone knows, especially in the after show. So like Chris said, if you want to become a YouTube member or a patron, if that's how you get access to these kind of groups. But the people we have in those groups already have been really good in the after shows at giving us the feedback throughout as well. So that's where my inspiration has come from recently, where I've had a real slump in terms of creativity for writing, because there's lots of creativity that goes in the show and there's only so much you can get out. So with all that going on, it's been really good and refreshing to have those people as a support network, and to kind of say, maybe put a challenge to me, which what happened, but also that encouragement to say, we want to read those 200 to 500 words, and because you've got to finish that, or you kind of feel like you're left out of the group. So having that there is not in a pressurized kind of sense. It's in a really good motivational sense. So I think it's really good to have that kind of network. And at the moment, it's just a small group on social media, but that could blossom into I don't know, an email kind of situation or Discord situation. We'll see how it goes and how big it grows. So that's down to you guys. If you want to be part of that, like Chris has said, and he set up this wonderful group, get in touch or join the Patreon or the YouTube channel. And we can, what Halo says, milk each other's brains.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, definitely. And that's obviously what it's all about in terms of, you know, I thought, why does this show exist? And, you know, the reason why we're having an interview tonight and the reason why we've had, 14 seasons worth of interviews is simply to get that little nugget of knowledge where you are going to go, oh, I can apply that to my own writing and that'll make it better. So improve. That's what we're looking to do.
No pressure, just improve. Okay, we'll get tonight's guest on because I know historical fiction is something that challenge has thrown up for me recently. This author has experience in that field, so I'm very excited and interested to get some of the knowledge out of this guest. It sounds very threatening today, doesn't it? I'm going to take that knowledge. No, extract it. No, that's bad as well. Just get to know some of that knowledge. So please let me introduce tonight's guest, otherwise we'll ramble. Anna says, improve or else. Yes, not that bad. Okay, so tonight we welcome the incredibly talented Freya Berry, author of the thrilling novel, The Birdcage Library. Freya's journey from journalist to novelist as it is captivating as the stories she writes, and we're excited to dive into it today. In this episode, we'll explore Freya's career path and how she transitioned from reporting the news to crafting intricate historical thrillers. We'll also delve into the fascinating world of the Birdcage Library, a Gothic tale set in a 1930s Scottish castle. Freya will share her insights on writing, inspirations, and what it's like to create such an immersive story. Plus, we'll be taking your questions live, so don't miss your chance to interact with Freya and get your burning questions answered. So without any more delay, please welcome the amazing Freya Berry to the show. Hello, Freya.
Hi, Chris. Hi, everybody listening in. Thank you very much for coming. I'm still slightly panicking about a writing group called Judgment. That's really sort of just.
We don't judge. We don't judge. Just Chris does. We don't judge harshly. Freya, thank you so much for joining us. It's a real pleasure to have you on the show and to chat about kind of what you've been up to, where you're going with your work, and how things are for you. So first of all, how is Freya? How's your week been? What's been going on?
Freya as well. I am well. I've started writing book 3, which is always a stressful time, and so I'm having to persuade myself that I'm not writing. That's the only way I can start a book. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll just put some words onto this random document over here, not even looking at it, not even looking. So yes, so it's an interesting time, and it's very nice to do something like this, which actually involves people rather than me versus my laptop. So, yeah.
No, it certainly is. And like we're talking about the chat group, having this show has been great for us and for the people who've become part of it to have that kind of connection. It really does help get out of that headspace when you're so deep into your own work you can't see anything outside of it. So I mean, writing is kind of a social thing at times. We're going to Harrogate next month now, Chris, after tomorrow, but coming very soon, and it's a great social experience. Where are you from in the world, Freya, and does that have a good writing scene, and is that kind of easy to be a writer around other people there?
Yeah, so I grew up in Bristol, which is a very sort of creative, artsy city, and I was part of a writing group there a long time ago, and now I live in London, and where lots of writers are, and you sort of think, oh, I'll just be sitting in my literary salon all the time and conversing with the great and good. And yes, fine, that well, no literary salons, but you do meet other writers. But I kind of hadn't really clocked when I became a novelist. I never thought about the lifestyle. I just wanted to write, and then actually slowly realized, oh, it's actually incredibly solitary, and solitary tips into lonely very easily. So I have had to sort of slightly work on, rediscovering, getting into that, and rediscovering meeting people, and having lunch with other writers, and having a moan, and whatever else that needs to be done to sort of feel like you're part of something rather than just, as I say, you versus your laptop. So it's a difficult balance, I would say, because obviously it's solitary. It is a solitary activity, but you can have too much solitude at the same time.
Definitely. Do you feel like that, Chris, when you're writing, or do you feel like with kind of what we're doing now, it's kind of helpful to have that, or have you always felt like writing is quite a solitary kind of experience?
Up until recently it was, but I think since I've had a writing group and writing buddy, it's weird because obviously sharing your work, even though it's not finished, you still, like, we share drafts and then get ideas and stuff that way, and that is quite refreshing because you know it's not the finished article and you are going to come back to it, but it's just somebody else going, so that can be quite good.
How often do you swap drafts back and forth? Is that like a weekly thing, or is this every month?
It's daily. So whatever we write, it goes off, and then we comment on it. So again, that 200 to 500 words is sort of where we're at, and that we found that is a manageable sort of amount to read. And obviously, if you were doing that every day with multiple people, it'd probably be quite difficult to keep on top of, and the admin gets a bit laborious. But when it's just one other person, you can fit that in your day, and it's quite. I look forward to it, to be honest, when I get the message and I read what they've wrote, and probably vice versa. I don't know if he enjoys it as much as I do, but there must be some sort of, and it's an accountability. That's what we did it for, accountability.
Yeah.
So when you were part of the writing group, Freya, in Bristol, did you learn much from that? And were there any experiences or kind of lessons that you took away from that you still kind of use in practice now?
Yeah, so gosh, it was a long time ago now, and I really should join another one, but it was interesting to see how other people. It's so much easier to identify other people's mistakes. It's so much easier to think, oh, if only you'd done that, that would be better. And then when it comes to yourself, you're like, I can't see the wood for the trees. So it was very interesting to have a sort of positive critical environment to talk things over, and but also to sort of appreciate when something was working in someone else's work and when it wasn't working, with obviously some kindness thrown in there, and then by learning what other people are doing well or not well, like you can kind of start feeding it back to yourself and your own work as well, and hopefully getting a bit more awareness, other than either sort of just sort of blind panic or I'm just going to write and see where this goes, which was helpful. It was a helpful journey. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. We're going to ramble on if I don't do this now. So in the best kind of way. So what I want to do is play part 1 video, which is the road to writing. So we love to find out about the authors that come on this show, how you got to the position you're in now, in terms of where the inspirations came from for you, how you started that journey, how things have changed for you as well. So I'll play this little video, and then we'll get stuck into the road to writing. So Freya, do you remember when you perhaps were doing something else, suddenly in your mind there was a spark saying, I think writing is something for me, and when you took that first step?
Yeah, I do. So I studied English at university, but never thought that, was never really writing anything fiction. In fact, there was a creative writing module which I specifically did not take. So clearly it wasn't happening for me back then. And then I became a journalist, and specifically a financial journalist, which was, positive in some ways, but quite dry in other ways. And my editors would go through my I thought beautifully written long paragraphs of metaphors and details, and just be like, no, okay, here you go, here's 3 sentences and that's your piece. We're like, oh, okay, awesome. So great. So that was kind of I went into journalism because I wanted to write, but then I was quickly realizing that journalism, obviously in retrospect, is not about the writing, it's about the facts, it's about the story, which is as it should be. Around the same time, so I think because I was kind of frustrated in that sense, I'd go home and write random stuff onto a Microsoft Word document, which kind of was becoming a story, but not with any sense of structure or talent, to be honest. And so I was doing this over months and months, and then I started thinking, okay, maybe I should be doing this, in the mornings and weekends. And then after some months, I was like, oh my god, is this a book? And no, it wasn't really. It was it was not. It was long. It was book length, but it was not a book. But I kind of had really enjoyed doing that, and found it enriching in a way that journalism wasn't. And so I had the crazy idea of leaving journalism to write. And I said, I'll give myself a year. I'll save up, and I'll take that plunge. And around that time, I was invited by a newspaper to go and report the 2016 US elections, so 2 election cycles ago, which feels like don't know where that time has gone. And that was out of New York, and so I said, well, okay, obviously I'll go and live my inner Carrie Bradshaw for 6 months, and I knew I was going to quit at the end of that 6 months time and spend a year writing a book, but I had no idea what that was going to be. And then that turned out to be, I was spending a lot of time watching Melania Trump and how she was this kind of enigma, this Sphinx-like sort of creature that everyone was projecting their own sort of wants and desires, and free Melania and all this kind of thing. And so that eventually became the inspiration for my first novel, The Dictator's Wife. God knows what I would have written if I hadn't, gone on to that campaign, because I had no idea. But I think that was, the moment when I quit my job as a journalist, that was a really sort of, okay, I guess I'm doing this, and taking the plunge, and that was very sort of scary but exhilarating. And even when I had no idea what was going to happen next, and was living at home with my parents, my very understanding parents, I never regretted it.
Yeah, that is a big leap of faith, isn't it? I mean, to leave something behind that that pays the bills, and you're confident in your profession, to go on a new journey is something that's fresh to you and maybe scary, like you said, and intimidating in many ways. And take that leap is really something brave. And obviously it's worked out for you.
It helps me 26 and a bit of an idiot, because you don't know, you don't look down so much. So yeah, what I don't know.
If someone's in a similar position where they're thinking they're not really enjoying what they're doing, but they'd love to go and write a book, and that's their kind of their dream or aspiration, what advice have you got going from what you've learned on your journey to them in that position?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy obviously to say, oh, quit your job, give yourself the headspace and time, and obviously, but I was very lucky to be able to do that. If you can and want to do that, fine, but that's not obviously the only way. I think it is, however, you can't write out of nothing, you can't write out of no time. But it's not about the quantity of time. You don't need a year to write a book, or certainly not all at once. It's more about having some kind of way of carving out headspace in order for those ideas to grow. And then the writing itself never actually takes as long as you think. It's actually the ideas and the sort of crafting of that story and letting it marinate in your head. So yes, if you can and want to quit your job, fine, great. But otherwise, working into your routine, I think, Chris Hooley, you were saying about, that 200, 500 words a day. That's sort of all you need. So long as you are giving yourself that empty space, that sort of deep thought time, where you can sink into yourself, and you're just sort of playing around in your head. I sort of call it kind of crab walking into something, because if you chase it down straight ahead, you never catch it. It's just, sort of need to sidle into it. And that's where the really great stuff lies. And I think that's where your creativity lies. And so channeling that is great.
I like that.
Freya, I'm really, really intrigued by you quit your job. You've got a bit of space in between. You go on the campaign trail. You're following an iconic woman at the time. So talk us through the writing sort of process between that, before the idea for your first book came along. And if you can, where that spark came in and you thought, right, this is not what I've done before in terms of, writing in a document, book length sort of thing. This is it now. I'm ready to rock and roll with this. So talk us through that if you can, that whole process.
Yeah. So there kind of was a lightning bolt moment, as you say. So I'd quit my sort of full-time job and had taken up this part-time assignment, and knew that at the end of that assignment, short-term assignment, not part-time, and at the end of that assignment, on the election campaign, I would then be starting to write this book, and the year sort of started from that moment. So I knew there was a very sort of hard beginning where suddenly I would be writing a book, whatever that was. But yeah, going back to that sort of notion of crab walking into ideas. Yeah, I was following Melania on the campaign trail, and I came across, you'll laugh, but an article about her Instagram page. Bear with me, which basically talked about it was basically a sort of psychological analysis based on her Instagram page at the time, and things like there were very few pictures of the outside world, as in the outdoors, and when you looked closely at the very few there were, it was clear they'd actually been taken through the window of a car. So she doesn't really go out.
Wow.
The only picture of an animal, as you can see, it made a big impact on me. The only picture of an animal on there was of a hermit crab, which is just like metaphorically too perfect. She's never in it except for with her big sunglasses. This woman who's sort of very much the most visible woman in the world, really, at the time, other than Hillary. And yet she's hiding. So I was just really intrigued by that. And that was my sort of lightning bulb. I need to write something about a woman who is that ambiguous and fine. My dictator's wife was very different in many ways. She was much more active, much less ambiguous in some forms. But that was where the seed was planted. And so once I had that idea, and then literally 1st of January 2018, I think 2017. Yeah, 2017. I was like, right, here we are. So just started doing lots of online research and sort of gathering ideas. And I like to steal ideas from my research. I think that's probably a journalist thing, basing ideas on facts. But that's where it all began. Yeah.
Wow, it's an amazing story so far already, shall I say? So going from
but yeah,
no, not at all. Going from journalism, obviously, is a very different style of writing to writing fiction. So how did you find that an easy transition to go from journalism into that writing?
I mean, I'd love to say yes, but obviously writing books is really hard. So no, at the same time, I think it had been really good training, actually, because the whole thing about kill your darlings. I came out of university being like, oh, I just love language. I shall just use all the language all the time. And journalism really sort of cut me back on that. I won't say it released in a Hemingway, sadly, but I'll always have a tendency to overwrite rather than underwrite for my sins. But it was it was a very helpful sort of training ground. And then, I think it works the other way as well. Like I still sometimes write articles by way of book publicity. I wrote an essay for the FT a few weeks ago about fake plants of all things, because the protagonist of the Birdcage Library is a plant collector, and actually it was really nice to bring some lyricism into. I mean, obviously it wasn't a hard news story, but it was really nice to sort of bring some lyricism back into the journalism, and that kind of felt like a bit of a circle there. But yeah, I think any kind of writing, one feeds off the other. Really, I don't think there's such a thing as unuseful writing, really, at all. It's all helpful.
Absolutely.
So Freya, what does a typical day look like for you in the writing world, in terms of, like, obviously you talked about the research that you do. Do you set certain times? You go in the morning, I'm going to do some research, in the afternoon I'm going to do some writing, or just tell us how it is, and if you can, try and give us a few tips.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a morning person in terms of writing. I find that's when I'm most creative. So I will start work around 8:39, and obviously sometimes a bit lazier, sometimes a bit more keen. And I find that I can really sort of only continue in a useful way if I'm actually writing rather than researching, which I'll come on to in a second. If I'm just pure writing, not editing, just first drafting, 9 until about 12:30 is about as much, which sounds incredibly loose. And when I first was speaking to writers when I was starting out, I'm saying, oh, you know, should I aim to write for 8 hours a day or 10 hours a day? And so, I mean, what? But my a woman who Juliette Tawhidi, who wrote Calendar Girls, told me never try and write more than 4 hours a day. It's like, oh, I'll be fine, Juliette, don't worry about me. And actually, you realise the good stuff goes. You know, I can feel it. It's a very physical feeling, and I'm just sort of like trying to ward that off as long as possible by not going on Twitter too much in the meantime, by procrastination. That doesn't help. But yeah, so I sort of run through that energy as long as I can until it's done. And that might take me to about 1,500 words, 2,000 if I'm feeling lucky, 1,000 if I'm, you know, messing around. But I mean, you know, that's, I've given myself a whole morning to do that. And then I will use the remaining brain power for research, as well as my, you know, sort of part-time day job. But research I find is a nice way to feel like I'm doing something without it necessarily taking up all the creative juices. But I say that, but actually a lot of great ideas come out of the research, which is kind of what you want it to do, but also kind of frustrating because then your head is still pinging around. So I think with research, a lot of my ideas come from nonfiction, whether that's articles online or whether that's just books that I love, anything from H is for Hawk to Albert and the Whale, just esoteric nonfiction I really find very sort of inspirational, although most of the stuff that I like to read is fiction. So I really like doing that. And then in terms of, just how to craft that into a story, I sort of feel like a lot of when I'm writing, it's this kind of push-pull of energy. You sort of wind up the tension in a scene and then you sort of get to that climactic moment and then you pull back again. It's sort of waves on the beach almost. So calibrating that is, it's just takes a lot of practice, and I won't pretend to have mastered it by any means. But yeah, that's kind of the rhythm of my day. I'm making it sound much less frustrating than it is.
Not at all. I
was going to say, if you...
Sorry, Chris.
Sorry, I was just going to say, if you drill down on that, when do you sort of know when you're done for the day in terms of, is it a certain scene and you think, right, I just need to get to the end of the scene, or do you think, right, I'm just too physically tired now, I'm going to stop? Or, you know, do you have a sort of process with that?
Yeah, I mean, someone, I can't remember who said that said to me that, you know, it's good to leave something in the tank at the end of each day. You know, you kind of know where you want the scene to go, or you haven't finished it yet, you know what you want the next scene to be, so you don't necessarily feel like you need to jump in and finish it all, and then the next day you'll kind of start with a blank slate, which is kind of terrifying. And I think there is something to that. But at the same time, I'm sort of get a bit greedy. I'm like, oh, I can do this now. I can do it. And then I have a sort of scorched earth the next day. What then I actually didn't mention is what I find really helpful, and I'm very bad at making myself do it because it feels like I'm not working, is going for a walk and just thinking of ideas. Exactly. I just think there's so much to be said for that rhythm, and again, letting yourself sidle into whatever it is, because the ideas are sort of delicate creatures, right? If you wring them out too much, they sort of die in your hands, and it's incredibly sad. So you sort of breathe life into them. Like, some of the best advice I ever got was from my amazing mentor, Piers Torday. He said, you know, if you wring an idea out, it's like dishcloth water. You know, it's just getting worse every time. Whereas if you go do something else, go a walk, like watch a good film, go to an exhibition, whatever it is, and sort of let your mind expand again. And walks are a sort of shortcut to doing that as well on a more daily basis. That's where good things happen, if you can let yourself do it.
Absolutely.
Nice.
We said before on the show that walking has been a great asset to us as well. It really does. If you're not someone who does that in terms of recharging, because Freya, you mentioned that a lot in the show, how you kind of get stuck in that mindset of creative spew, and then suddenly it's running dry. And people try to push through it, but leaving it on a high and then going out for a nice walk and just switching off from it is really surprisingly good at sparking it back up. So if you don't do that, please try it this weekend or next week. Just try and switch off, leave it alone, come back to it. It really will pay dividends.
Exactly.
Okay.
What, you're going to follow that up with a question, Agate?
No. I just reinforcing that great statement. Go out and walk. It's great for you. Vitamin D as well. Hopefully. What we're going to do is go on to part 2.
And white bits.
It's good. It's good for creating your white bits if you wear clothes. Unless you walk around naked, but please don't do that unless no one's around.
This writing group is great. It's going to be great.
Okay, part 2, we're going to talk about your latest book, The Birdcage Library, and obviously talk about what's coming up as well. So we've had a bit of talk about your processes. We want to talk about the stories now, and perhaps some things that may have inspired those stories. So part 2, what's the story? Kevin, right up. So, Freya, could you pitch to us, if this is in your arsenal to do so, the Birdcage Library, or to our audience?
No pressure. Sure. So the Birdcage Library, it's a sort of Gothic mystery and a love story at the same time. So a female explorer discovers an old diary hidden inside a Scottish castle, and she's drawn into the mystery of this woman who vanished 50 years before, as well as a hunt for a treasure that men would kill to find. So it's kind of detective novel, mystery, and that sort of Daphne du Maurier kind of vibe. And it's set between 1930s Scotland and Gilded Age New York, about 50 years before. So it's female-driven historical fiction. And I guess in terms of the themes, it's kind of about freedom and the price we pay for that, as well as about the cages that we build other people, but more importantly, the ones that we build ourselves. I'm kind of obsessed with the metaphor of the bird in the cage, hence the Birdcage Library, and hopefully it's a enjoyable read.
Well, the reviews seem to say that it is, as was your first, and obviously having a lot of kind of recognition for your first book. Was there any more pressure on you to kind of come up with the Birdcage Library after that?
Yes and no. I mean, well, actually, no, just yes, actually. But more because it's not like there was sort of, hundreds of thousands of people banging at my door demanding to know the next installment. It was more like I wrote the first book without an agent, without a publisher. It was just me, and there was no expectation other than, can I finish this? Can I do this? Is this going to be good enough for someone even to, read it to the end one day? And then once you do that once, you're like, hooray, I can do it. I shall be happy forever. And then you have to do it again. And then it's no longer about, can I do it? Because you've done it. It's, can I do it again, but as good, if not better? And that's a whole different ball game. And there's a publishing sort of machine around you, which is great. It's what I wanted. But it's also, that sort of, you're aware of eyes on your shoulder, which is new and sort of helpful at times, but terrifying at other times. So yes.
Yeah, I bet. It's a fascinating story, and what really grabs my attention, first of all as a reader, but also as a writer, that you use 2 different timelines in 2 different cities with 2 different cultures. That's something very difficult to balance and get right as well, especially being historical. How did you approach kind of the research of that, and do you feel like you did a good job of getting those timelines right?
Yeah, I'm laughing because I just I don't think I could have made it that much harder for myself. I mean, it was just 2 completely different sets of research, like double the research for half the output, researching 2 books for 1 book. Yes, theoretically, I will never do that again, except for my 3rd book is also going to be dual timeline. So I don't know what I'm doing or why I'm doing it. Anyway, so that was challenging. It was fun. I like research. That helps. And you start off here with this Google search, and you end up here in this like obscure library digging around for like, maps of Dutch New York. I don't know. It's just it's fun following those threads, but it takes a lot of time. And I mean, the 2 inspirations for those 2 timelines are just sort of so you can see what I'm talking about. So the first timeline in Gilded Age, in 1930s Scotland, this female explorer, that was because, so I'm named after an explorer called Freya Stark, who my dad met back in the 70s. She was in her 90s and still exploring. She was a total badass.
Wow.
And just the first woman into the first person, the first Westerner into the Valley of Assassins, like, sort of Middle East kind of intelligence official in the Second World War, like just a really cool lady. And I came across her desk, which was sort of round, like a map of the globe, and I just thought I need to write about a female explorer and take things from there. So that's where that came from, and then therefore I had my setting and I had my sort of backdrop for this time, golden age of exploring and plant hunting, but also exploring reading about female adventurers, from Freya Stark to Gertrude Bell, via Isabella Bird and so on. Because you never know. The problem with researching, the great thing about researching, but the problem with researching is you never know where inspiration's going to come from. So reading as much as you can, even if you might read 3 books or dip into 3 books and it ends up being a single sentence, but just knowing that you had that sentence, being able to pull everything together into that sentence is what creates texture and structure and a world. So I can't underestimate the importance of doing that. At the same time, you can do too much research. So for the Gilded Age piece, story, which is this woman called Hester Vogel, who marries an exotic animal dealer, who is a real life person. He was called Charles Reich, and they were 2 brothers who imported lions for P.T. Barnum's circus, and so on. There was this time of the British showman and the American circus, and as you can see, I'm getting excited by all the rich historical detail, and this is the era of the Vanderbilts and the Astors and taking New York. So just loads of great stuff is going on. And I'm like, I wanted to put it all into the book. I want to put it all in there, and and you obviously can't do that either. So yeah, it's about having that real eye for the one detail that makes it sing.
It's making my mind hurt listening to all of that. how much energy and effort went into that. I mean, first of all, there's so many.
So I didn't have that much else to do, to be fair. But yeah.
Obviously, your journalistic research love played well into that, because for me, looking into those, I wouldn't even know which timeline or which kind of era, topic or situation or anything to look at first. And you obviously narrowed that down pretty well and used them both to complement each other. So obviously well done. But yeah, having heard that you would never do that again is something I'm not going to look into doing ever.
Yeah, and then there's always the risk of the shiny idea where you're like, oh, I'm writing this, but look at this over here, which I haven't touched yet, and I haven't even started to ruin. So maybe I'll give it that. Yeah, it's endless.
But Freya, you talked about obviously the book being a gothic mixed with romance. Like, what advice could you give to somebody that was trying to blend 2 genres and to not have it lean too heavily in one category?
Yeah, so I once went to the Jericho Writing Festival actually, before I got an agent, and it was up in York at the time. And I can't remember her name, unfortunately, but an author got us, who was really great. She got us to do a sort of mind map of genres that we would love to write. I can't remember what I put, probably historical fiction or whatever it was. And then she said, write down genres that you would never write for whatever reason. And I wrote, I remember very specifically, I wrote a love story and a detective novel. And I ended up writing for this book a detective novel crossed with a love story. So I don't really know how that happened, because the thing I don't really like doing is plotting very meticulously. I like to sort of go out and figure it out along the way, which you cannot do with a detective novel. You have to know where it's going. So I think it's about, when you sort of push against your comfort zone, that's when interesting stuff starts to happen. So again, I'm not saying pick your least favorite novel, pick your least favorite format and write some sort of speculative sci-fi, whatever, if that's not your thing. But I think when you rub up against the edges of what you think you're capable of and what you know, then yeah, interesting things can happen there. And then also knowing the genres that you're trying to mix together, you know, reading lots of love stories, which I did, reading lots of Gothic novels, which I did, you know, Rebecca and Lady Audley's Secret and all those great things. So yeah.
Nice.
So what inspiration did you get from kind of the authors that you've read and loved? Did you get any direct inspiration from those for your works, or has there been an author that kind of inspired you to write generally? What's that been like for you as a reader to then write?
Yeah, I think great writing is always inspirational when you find that one author who like sings to you and it's like, oh my God, where you live in their universe for a few days and it's wonderful. That always generally inspires me, even if it doesn't give me specific ideas. And I mentioned Albert and the Whale earlier, which is probably my favorite book, and it's by I'm going to forget his name, Philip something. Anyway, it's brilliant, and it's a non-fiction but lyrical and fantastic in the sort of old sense of the word. And so I find that very inspirational. That makes me write better, hopefully. But then there's also, the sort of specific inspiration. So I was writing a detective novel with a strand set in the Gilded Age. So I read detective novels written in the Gilded Age. And there were lots of great, forgotten classics, about daring lady detectives who carried revolvers and dressed as gentlemen at times while smoking, sort of scandalous. So that was really fun as well. But then, it's also about reading sort of modern classics as well. So I really wanted there to be a big twist in there. And so I was reading Fingersmith by Sarah Waters, which has, I won't ruin it, but just a spectacular twist. And I sort of remember that and wanted to go back and see how she'd done it. So so picking other people's work apart is always what they've done behind the scenes is incredibly helpful and inspirational. Yeah.
I've just found the Whale. What did you call it? Sorry.
Albert and the Whale.
Yes. Philip Hoare.
Yes.
Hoare?
Yeah. I'm not sure how to pronounce it necessarily, but
no, it looks like Hoare. Not like the way you think it's spelled. Anyway, it looks interesting, definitely, and I like the way dissecting people's works is a great way to learn, and I think that's something that's very worth getting into if you don't do it. It's a very interesting process, and especially historical fiction, because do you find that with historical fiction people are judgmental about how you describe historical fiction or the timelines?
In terms of I find if you tell people that you write historical fiction, they always assume you're writing about the Tudors for some reason. I don't know why that is. They just go straight to the Tudors, and I'm like, no, a little bit further, a little bit newer. So yeah, I don't know. I think all of human history is essentially the past, except for today. So I find it as a label quite unhelpful. I just say I write fiction with the sort of historical angle, I guess, as sort of get out clause. But yeah, it's something that I never intended to write historical fiction. It's just I'm fascinated by these different eras, and it's great to pick and choose from the whole canvas of human history.
So for a personal tip I want there, and it's going to relate to somebody, I'm sure. I'm writing a historical fiction novel for the first time now. I'm struggling, and this is a question that hopefully will resonate with some people. Where you draw the line between research, fact, and fiction, if that makes sense. Where do you put that blended line?
Yeah, I mean, I'm wrestling with this right now because I'm basing the novel is based on real life people, and my sort of main characters are fictional, but they are surrounded by real people. And for the first time, I'm thinking, screw it. I'm taking your lives. I'm making it all out. You're all dead now. I'm just going to take massive liberties with the whole thing. Whereas in the Birdcage Library, I was very sort of, cognizant of things like, okay, fine, I was taking real people. My main characters are fictional again, but her husband was real, although I did change his surname in the end, just to give myself a bit more license. But I spent ages scrutinizing newspapers for when they'd moved to Germany to figure out the timeline of what I needed to do. I spent ages, there's an appearance by a hunter who used to work for P.T. Barnum and ran circuses for him and under sort of suspicious circumstances. spent ages being like, can I make him like secretly gay or not? Like, spent ages agonizing over this stuff. And I've heard there's two types of authors. There's, one that says, who cares, it's fiction, and the other who is like, but did it ever rain in Nebraska in 1824? And there's sort of, not much in the middle. I'm trying to be a bit more in the middle. I think you've just got to, unless there's some kind of, unless they're still alive, and even then you can take liberties as long as you know what you're doing. I think it is just, using lies to tell truth is always the sort of creed of fiction. So I'm trying not to worry about it too much, really. Saying this now.
Good luck with that.
On the other side, yeah. You can let me know.
I've got a question now, Freya, that I've never asked before. I'm slightly apprehensive about asking it.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. Bear in mind, we've been talking about reading other people's work for inspiration.
Yeah.
My question is, if somebody was going to come to your work to look at a specific thing that you do really well, what would that thing be? And on the back of that, what area of your writing do you still want to improve?
Oh, God, what questions? Okay, all right. So I would hope that they would come to me for sort of layered characters. I hope that they would say, okay, your women, because I've mainly written women so far as main characters anyway, are sort of multi-layered and complicated, and not. I think the strong female character thing is way. It's not that it's invalid, but it's a very sort of two-dimensional thing. So you can be strong but interesting, and weak, and or angry or sad or whatever it is. Women are just people. So, and we all have our own shit to deal with. So hopefully a many-layered character. And then the part of my writing that I'd love to improve is, and I'm thinking about this a lot because thematically my book is about time, and I am trying to get a sense of how people handle time in books, as in, sometimes authors, a decade passes in 3 pages and you don't even notice. It's just so seamless, and then they'll spend 3 chapters on the pouring of a cup of tea. People who can do that really well, and who are not just like, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, which I find myself doing unless I work really hard against it. That's something I would love to improve. Just sort of playing with that authorial eye would be really great. So yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah, sorry about that one. I realised it was a bit of an awkward one when I asked it, but I thought...
Yeah, it really got me thinking.
Curveball there, but a good question, good answer. Okay, in a minute, guys, we will be asking your questions to Freya. So please, if you have any at all, please send them into the chat right now, and we'll have a look at those. I'm sure you can think of some creative ones.
Yeah, I said to Chris, I think I said to you before we started that no question too strange. So although maybe I'll get that now, but yeah, please do ask. Thanks everyone so far.
Absolutely. So before we do move on to that part of the show, Freya, we've heard about your previous works, what the Birdcage Library is about, but what are you working on now? What's coming next for readers?
Yeah, so I'm working on another sort of female-driven novel with historical slant, although it's dual timeline, and one timeline is in the past, is in the Victorian London, and the other is in modern day Paris. So totally different. So I've given myself yet another.
I don't know what you're doing to yourself, Freya.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. I keep being like, just write a book set in the present day Maldives and go research it at length. Like,
exactly.
So yes, so that's what I'm working on, and it's sort of about time and clocks, as well as being sort of 2 love stories, one in the modern day, one in the past. So yeah, that is what I'm fevering.
It seems very topical for me at the moment because I'm watching Bodies on Netflix. Has anyone seen that?
No,
so it's a new series, and there's 3 murders of the same bodies appeared in 3 different timelines.
And wow, that sounds amazing.
Yeah. So there's 3 detectives all in these different timelines that you're watching them all, figuring out what's going on, and then they all come together, and your mind just goes, "What?"
Oh, that sounds great.
It's called
Okay.
Bodies. It's got Stephen Graham in it. It's actually really good.
Okay.
So
I
check
thought
that
you
out.
were saying the body problem for a second, which I did.
No, I've seen that.
Yeah, I really liked that. Well, that was also very interesting about time and so on. So yeah.
So my question was going to be, just before we do move on, you mentioned then setting your book in a lovely place, going researching it there. Have you done any physical research, location research, and how did you do that? And how did you take that in when your timelines would be different from what you're looking at? That makes sense.
Yeah, such a good point. So yes, with both books, but particularly the first book, actually, The Dictator's Wife is set in post-communist Eastern Europe, an area of the world about which I knew very little before starting to write. And so I took myself off to Eastern Europe for 4 months during my year that I was writing it. And my first day I turned up. It was February in Bucharest. I was staying in an Airbnb with a man I'd never met, and turned up, and he wasn't there. He was really late, so I sat on a dark stairwell about 10 p.m. being like, "What am I doing? What am I doing? What am I doing?" And then he turned up and said, "I'm so sorry, I've just been at the protest." And I was like, "What protest?" And he was like, "Did you not see all the crowds and police cars coming in from the airport?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, but I just thought, I don't know, Bucharest, you guys do you." Anyway, he said, "Do you want to come?" And he said, "Do you want to come?" And I was like, "Yes." So literally just chucked my bags in the flat and went with him to what turned out to be the biggest protest they'd had since 1989. They were protesting this corrupt government law that was coming in. 300,000 people in a square chanting the Romanian for thieves. We all got tear gassed. My new friends took me to some underground palace where we went drinking for several hours, Romanian plum brandy. And that was my introduction to physical on the ground research. So
that sounds awesome.
It was. I don't know how we started, how that was my first day, but that was my first day. And then I spent several months traveling around. Yeah, it was great. And it was actually essential, not the tear gassing. Although that did become the scene. It did become the protest scene in the book. So it was all research, all material. But yeah, the sort of soaking up the texture of a place, even though it's modern day, it's obviously not that far from.
So did you do that trip on your own?
Yeah, I did.
That is brave.
Yeah, as I say, I held through 26 and not looking down. That's my key. I think that's my key advice, actually, with writing a book. It's obviously a lunatic expedition, just like don't look down ever. So don't question it.
Yeah. just imagine being in a foreign country. Well, even as me or as a woman sat in a dark stairway, waiting for someone that's not there. That's really terrifying.
Yeah, it was exciting. It was it was interesting. And then I did all sorts of crazy stuff, like went around sort of abandoned iron mills, went to see the former site of the Winter Olympics. It was a great time.
That's like the start of a book in my head already. You
take that from me.
Going into that riot, yeah. There you go. Freya's expedition. Okay, we're going to move on to the final part of the show, part 3, community questions. If you've got any, please send them in. Me and Chris will go through our staple questions. I've loaded a load in there, Chris. There's even extra ones that we've never asked. So if you want to change them up, please have a look in the comments in the banner section. You can see them. So community questions coming up. We might throw some curveballs at Freya, but hopefully all some good ones. Please send them in. So I know Chris loves to start this part of the show off, so I will, of course, let him go with whatever question he wants to start with.
Well, again, I'm in the habit of asking questions that I've not asked before tonight. So, yeah, this is not as deep as the other one, but this is about what 3 things do you wish you'd known before you got published?
Nice.
Ooh, such a good question. Okay, so first of all, that publishing, being published is obviously brilliant in many ways, but you are suddenly the thing that you love, and that you started doing because you love it, hopefully. I can't think why else you would do it otherwise. Um, the thing that you love is now your job, and that is a fundamental shift. And that means,
Yeah.
Agatha Christie, I think, says the difference between, I'm going to mangle it, but the difference between being an amateur and a professional writer is, being, when you're a professional, you have to write when you don't feel like it, when you're not sure it's any good, and so on. So that's something to bear in mind. I think the other thing is, and this runs the risk of sounding trite or cliched, is just having faith in your own voice. And that doesn't mean like being pig-headed and never listening to edits or whatever it is. But for novels, like, the book is only your vision. That's all you have, is your vision. And other people can come in and help elevate it, and so on. But you will know in your head when something isn't true to your voice. And if you lose that, then you have nothing else. Like, it's not a compromise worth making, because this industry is hard and writing is hard. And if you're writing something you don't feel emotionally invested in, it won't be the quality that it needs to be. And therefore it's a whole self-defeating, self-fulfilling exercise. So that's the other thing. And then the third thing is, I think, yeah, it's again that, well, I've already said not looking down, but I do passionately believe it. I'll tell you what, this is something that I was told by another writer, and I won't go into the gory details of the example that she used, but I will give it to you so you can look it up. So it was a workshop that I did, and again, I can't remember the lady's name, but she was brilliant. And she said, "Tell the truth." And you think, "Oh yeah, tell the truth, like whatever." She's like, "No, really, tell the truth. That, write like not that no one else is watching. Write that like not even you are watching, not even you are looking at what's on the page. It should be so scaldingly, embarrassingly not explicit or anything like that necessarily, but it should be so true that you're ripping bits out of yourself." And she gave us an example, the Tinder poo story, which I really recommend you Googling at some point, about a
Right
student in school. And basically, I won't give the details, but it's a situation that starts here and ends not even here, like out there, like out the window. And the point is, the ending is outlandish, but you can see the individual, very justifiable stages that got them to here. And her point was, if you can't see so much human truth in that story, then you need to work on your empathy and that sort of understanding and compassion for humanity that will lead you to writing great books. So yeah.
Nice.
Well,
Chris is looking at that. Go on.
BBC News says a woman who became trapped between two windows on a first date, in which she threw her own feces out the window, says it was all a terrible mistake.
That's it. That's the one. And I mean, I don't think that was even. I think they actually went on a second date after that. So
no way.
Oh yeah, I don't think it worked out beyond that, but yeah, people are strange, and yeah, I need to understand that. I think it helps.
I think I could have lived my whole life without knowing that was a thing.
But would you have been happy?
Yeah. Because now, obviously,
you've written darker stuff than that, my friend.
I know, but I'm filling in the blanks and Tinder and out of the window.
Stuck between two windows.
No, but I'm literally there's a guy. He's sat on the bench. He's had a hard day. He's about to tuck into a sandwich, and bang, all over his face. Imagine just looking up at that.
Well, that was a big seagull.
I'm sure I should have brought in some highbrow literary tip there, but
our show
for you,
yeah. Brilliant. Okay, let's get on. We're pushing the time, and I don't want to keep you too long. If you could take the ending of anything, TV, a film, a book, and change the ending of anything at all, what are you going to change and why?
I think I'd have to be, not because it's my favorite book or anything like that, mainly because of the ending actually, but Captain Corelli's Mandolin, the ending of that. I don't know if you've read the book. I haven't seen the film. I'm told the ending is different, which is great. But the ending of that drove me absolutely mad. You had this beautiful, I'm going to ruin it because if you haven't read it by now, then you've had enough time. So beautiful love story crafted over decades and decades. And then in the last sort of fifth of the book, everyone that you care about dies in upsetting ways, but not in any way that's like, you know, given sort of time and investment. And then the love story is kind of thrown away on this sort of cheap joke / misunderstanding. It drove me absolutely wild. I was so sad. So yeah, if I could change that book, then I would. Sorry, Louis de Bernier. It was very good otherwise. That's why.
It sounds like a great horror book.
That's what we need to do. Yeah. The remake.
I think I'm going to skip the other community questions that we have and go straight to one that's come in, because I really like the historical fiction one, the strange one that Halo Scott has put in.
Which one?
It's a second question of Halo. That one.
Oh yes, more strange strange question. Kiss, marry, or kill historical figure edition.
I mean, is just this anyone in history? I mean, this is great, Rima. Okay. Well, you'd have to. I'm going to stick with writers just to narrow it a little bit. I'm gonna marry Shakespeare, obviously. I'm going to kiss Byron because, you know, he was a bit of a babe. And then I would kill. Oh no, who am I going to kill? I'd kill Ayn Rand because I feel like her books have not been great for the world. So yeah.
Okay. Adding on to that, how would you kill them? No, you don't have to answer
that. slowly. Well, in the Birdcage Library, Emmy has asked how she would, as a plant hunter, how she kills them without anyone finding out. And you put a bamboo shoot underneath someone's skin, just a little bit of bamboo shoot, and it grows inside them and kills them from the inside out. So you can have that from me.
That's horrific.
Is that real?
I mean, according to random Chinese literature that I was reading back in the day, yeah, apparently so. So you can have that one from me.
Ow.
I know.
That's
okay.
Savage.
How cruel are you? Sorry. Oh my goodness. No, joking. There's a character. Good question, Halo. Thank you. And she's got another one. Thank you for that, Halo. If you could live in any era from history, which era would you choose and why? Thank you.
I think I'd probably go with that sort of. I've been watching too much Bridgerton recently, so I want to say the Regency era. I think that era of Middlemarch, where you just could be a country rector and spend your time discovering like Boyle's Third Law, and lecturing once a week, but then otherwise being left very much to your own pursuits and to having grand suppers in your country house. I think that would be quite nice. Yeah, as long as I could be the rector, not anybody else, that would be fine. Yeah,
it's an interesting question, that one.
Yeah,
I'm going to ask. I'm going to ask one of the questions that are staple, Chris, just because we're very much aware that we are on this platform and this recording could outlive us. Somebody in the future inherits your characters and your fictional worlds. What would your advice be to them? What would you want them to do?
Wait a second. Sorry. Tell me the question again. I'm not sure I understood.
So whenever your writing career finishes, you're long gone. You've left your estate to somebody. Somebody's been approached and they've said, we want to use Freya's work and Freya's characters. What would your advice be to that person who maybe sat there in 200 years' time, about to use your work? What would you want them to do?
I'd want them to have quite a lot of creative freedom with it, to be honest. I'd hope that they create something that's layered and rich and feels convincing as a world. But I'm also a great believer in adding your voice into something else and just seeing what happens. So long as they had fun with it, that would be fine. That would be fine with me. They can throw in some random monsters and dragons if they want to, long as it feels cohesive in some way. I'm okay with that. Yeah.
Oh, that's very expressionate and free. I like that.
Yeah, I'm
Throw
gonna
some
hold on
dragons
to
in.
it too tight. I'll be
Yeah.
gone. So as long as they make something cool with it, that's fine with me.
Cool. Good answer.
Thank you.
Okay, we are over time by nearly 5 minutes, so maybe if you put one more in there, Chris. One more question.
And thank you
Yeah,
so much everyone for listening, by the way, and for the questions. And I'm just reading the comments now. It's great.
One of the questions that we have is, again, it's a bit morbid, but you're on your deathbed, you're looking back at your writing career. What would you be happy with? What is success to you?
I mean, obviously, the month where I won the Booker and the Nobel in the same week would be, you know, that would be a high. No, I think I don't know. It's very easy when you're going through the publishing sort of wheelhouse to get lost in process and sales and results, and of course those things are all important. But after my first book came out, I got a message on Instagram from someone who said that she'd grown up in East Germany, which is kind of the Cold War backdrop to the book, and she had been reading it while suffering from cancer. She was a cancer patient, and she said that the book had brought her joy and sort of escapism and just a nice time. And actually, I thought to myself, if I can't be happy with that, then what am I doing this for? And obviously, being a writer, you don't get that kind of feedback every day or even every year. But writing something that matters to people is, whether that's published or not, by the way, you can write something that matters to someone in a blog post and whatever else format it is. Writing something that at some point means something to someone is what it's all about. And you often don't know that. Some of the authors I love most in the world I've never told. I don't follow them on Twitter. I don't watch them on anything. But that doesn't change the fact that they mean something. So yeah, I think being able to do that and look back, and hopefully having been told a few more stories like that in my over the course of my career, I would have to be happy with that.
I think that is one of my favorite answers to that question.
Oh, thank you.
Because we always get not similar ones. We get a lot of different ones, but generally the same kind of area. But I love that. It's all about the reader. That's a great answer.
It is.
So one final question before we do wrap this up, and thank you for everyone that's tuned into this. If you're listening back on the podcast, thank you. If you're watching it back on YouTube, thank you as well. Please reach out on social media, give Freya a follow. If you follow our Twitter or X, whatever it's called, you'll see our latest post with Freya's tagged in there, so just give her a follow as well. But Freya, where can people find out more about you? Where can they buy your latest books and social accounts, those sorts of things? Where can they get hold of you?
Yeah, so The Dictator's Wife and the Birdcage Library are both out in paperback now from all good bookstores and online. The Birdcage Library will be out in the US in winter, in December, I think. And yeah, please do follow me. I'm at Freya B Books on Twitter and Instagram. I have an ill-advised TikTok, but please don't look at that. And yeah, thank you so much.
We're gonna.
And thank you so much for listening and for your questions and comments and so on. It really matters and it's really nice to chat to people, because you do just spend the rest of your time screaming into your laptop, so it's very nice to emerge at the other side. So thank you.
Brilliant.
Nice. And on that, we will see you on the other side of next week.
Yeah. Freya, thank you so much. You've been a fantastic guest. Chris, thanks for those brilliant new questions you asked. They were really good. And thank you all for being here as well. So have a great weekend. Please stay safe, look after yourselves, and we will see you next week. If you're on holidays, please let us know what you're doing. Excited to know what we're not doing. Are you on holiday soon, Chris?
No,
me neither. Freya?
No.
Holiday photos. And put your, what did you say? Put your bits in the chat, Chris, earlier.
No, I'm not going to say that again.
No, don't put your bits in the chat.
Keep your bits out of the chat.
Join our support group, guys. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank
See you soon.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.